Good afternoon and welcome to our mywage LinkedIn Live. We're going live on LinkedIn today and we're here with special guest Samantha O'Sullivan, who is the Policy and Advisory Lead at CIPP. And we have Ben from mywage as well. So first of all, welcome everybody. Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Thanks, Sam. So Ben Harper, I am the VP of Sales at mywage. mywage is a Salesforce native middle and back office solution. And we serve predominantly the staffing market. We have clients globally, but ultimately, if anybody has any need for onboarding, HR, scheduling, payroll, or invoicing, wherever they are in the world, we'd be happy to have a conversation.
Cool. Thank you so much, Ben. And Samantha, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for having me. My name's Sam O'Sullivan. I'm the Policy and Advisory Lead at the CIPP. So what do those words actually mean? Because they're a bit like a word salad, aren't they? They don't really describe what I do. So in regards to the advisory team, I head up our advisory service. So any member of the CIPP has access to our amazing advisory team. So you can pick up the phone, you can drop them an email if you've got any processing or administrative payroll questions. So you're stuck with, I don't know, an alabaster query, you can pick up the phone and our team can support you through that. I also look after the policy and research team at the CIPP, and we wear lots of different hats, but ultimately we are there as your voice. So we are the industry voice between you as a payroll professional and government, what they need to know. So we are looking more so at the future of payroll. So I'll leave it there, Sam, because we're going to touch on the future of payroll later on today.
Yeah, we're actually talking about the past, present, and future of payroll. So I'm going to hand you over to Ben and anyone who's watching. If you want to put in the comments anything or ask a question, we can feature your comment or question on the screen. So it's a chance for you to get involved as well. So thank you. I'll hand over to Ben.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's live session. So payroll is evolving rapidly, right? It is shaped by technological advances, regulatory changes, shifting workforce expectations, the list goes on. And to help us unpack these developments, we're thrilled to have Sam on the call today. And Sam is a renowned expert in payroll policy and an advocate for professional excellence in the industry. So Sam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. And that was a really nice introduction. I like the words that you use, and I might pinch those from you, Ben. But yeah, absolutely. And delighted to be here to talk with you. And probably one of my favorite topics to talk about is payroll, right? So payroll started out being a super manual process, tapes that people used to hold records on, to really quite cutting edge technology that we're seeing today. So it's been on an incredible journey. And I know that we're going to reflect on a bit of the past, where we are now, and what the future holds. It's not just for the profession, but more, I want to touch on more of the policy aspects as well, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, great. That's great. Well, let's dive into that then. So let's start with the past and where it all started. So I think as you rightly just said, payroll has historically been a rather manual and highly time-consuming process. Paper timesheets, physical time cards, as you said, and manual calculations were the norm. But as businesses have grown, regulations have become more complex. The need for accuracy and compliance has driven payroll software innovations. So, Sam, from your perspective, what role has automation played in moving us from those dark times to where we are today?
Yeah, and I think when you say dark times, I just remember my first role in payroll. We were in a locked away office, whereas now we can be sat in an open plan office. A lot of us are working from home, like you and I are today, Ben. And we've definitely been on a journey, right? And I think two things we can discuss, which ultimately summarizes how far we've come. And a lot of that took place in 2012. And anyone who's been working in payroll since then or before then will probably know where I'm going with this. But RTI implementation, the first one. So anyone who's come into the industry fairly recently, because 2012 wasn't all that long ago, but now it's you run your payroll, you do your FPS. It's the norm that we have this RTI process. But that wasn't what happened prior to 2012. So now everyone knows that as soon as you pay an individual, you have to report that to HMRC on or before the payday. So it fits with the way of the working world. A lot of people are multiple job holders. They will have more than one job. So RTI was implemented once HMRC got that information on time. So it aligns with everything we do in payroll. It's accurate and it's on time. So HMRC know what's going on. And to link in with RTI, the other thing that came into play in that year, in 2012, was in October for larger employers, automatic enrolment was put into play. And we may not think of that as being a technological advancement, but I certainly do. Because now someone goes to work and instead of thinking about my employer doesn't offer a pension scheme, let me go and talk to a financial advisor independently who can help me to invest for my future. Your employer does it all for you. And one thing that I really try and shout about is payroll. Payroll normally only gets highlighted when something goes wrong, right? But that's the way it should be. We are a compliance-based activity. We haven't really got that much room for movement. We can't just play with the tax bands and see if we can make sure someone doesn't pay tax this month, right? It's very prescribed and we like a process and we like to follow that process. We're very compliant people. But the value add is, do most workers appreciate that when you are employed, you have your income tax calculated for you and sent to HMRC on your behalf. You have your national insurance, your student loan, if you've got one. You also have your pension contribution calculated, sent to a pension fund and invested all on your behalf. And I really try and share that with people. So it's not just, oh, payroll, yeah, they pay me once a month. It's just a big red button. Well, actually, when it comes to automation, it should be just a big red button. Your software should be doing all the work behind the scenes for you. And once you've got that into play, so let's think about AI. That's a big topic at the moment. And RPA, so robotic process automation. I want people to know that you don't have to be scared that a robot is going to make you redundant and take your job off your hands. Technology comes into its own, right? It can look after all of those manual, repeated tasks that we run.
Yep.
So if you think about your net to net variances, your gross to net reports, your pension reconciliations, they can all be automated. And I don't know from a mywage perspective, but I think there'll be a lot of payroll professionals who are already using RPA, but they don't know it because their software's just doing it on their behalf. But if they reflect maybe 5 years ago, what VLOOKUPs they had to run on a pay period basis versus, actually, I don't have to touch Excel anymore because my software is running those reports for me. We can then reflect on that journey. And when I say don't be scared of automation, I think we need to embrace it because that allows payroll professionals to concentrate on more of the value add roles that payroll can give. So, for example, you might want to create a payroll induction for any new starters in the organisation.
Mhm.
So you can shout about who payroll are, what your payroll cut-offs are at work, so no one misses their overtime, for example. And, payroll is always going to be an emotive subject. We're literally playing with people's livelihoods here. We're paying them so they can pay their mortgage or pay their rent. They can put food on the table. They can take their children on holiday or their friends and family away. So no matter how far technology advances, I truly don't ever feel that payroll professionals in human form are going to be out of a job when it comes to running a payroll. Now, I spoke about AI, and this kind of segues a little bit into the future. So, excuse the tenuous link here, but there's a Treasury committee that is running an call for evidence in regards to AI in financial services. Now, the CIPP are running a think tank for our members tomorrow. So I just wanted to put it out there. If anyone who is watching live rather than on a watch back, we're running a think tank tomorrow. So it's the 18th of February at 10:30. That's for CIPP full fellow and chartered members. And I want to hear about what you're doing right now in payroll and AI. What have you implemented? What's the value add? So we can respond to that Treasury committee and let them know this is what the industry thinks of AI right now. So that was my convoluted summary of where we've come, Ben. I hope that's okay.
Perfect. And I think then segues nicely into today, right? So let's look at payroll and payroll technology today. And then lastly, I'd love to get your steer. We've already alluded to it. Everyone's obviously talking about AI and automation, but we can have a little bit more of a chat around where realistically it's going to go, do we think? So let's get your steer then on the today, the here or the now. What are some of the pros, the cons, the pains, the ups and downs that people are experiencing today?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk very practical terms of what people are thinking about right now. So maybe not necessarily on the automation side of things, but what people need to be concentrating on right this minute. So the one thing I love about payroll is it's always changing, right? And I've only just about got my head wrapped around the 24-25 rates and thresholds and bands. And once again, I'm needing to upskill ready for the 25-26 tax year. And right now, people will be thinking about tax year end and what they need to be doing. So the first thing that I will always stress is directors NI. So let's do a bit of a myth bust, if you will, around directors' national insurance. So if you have directors on your payroll and they are paid on the alternative method, that's alternative for a director. But what that means is their national insurance is calculated in the normal way, like any other employee on the payroll. Oh, Ben, I can hear some background noise. I don't know if
Can you?
got somebody else talking in their room. So I just thought if I can hear it, maybe others will as well. If you've got directors who are paid on the alternative method for their national insurance, they need to be changed to the director's method or the annual threshold method in the final pay period of the tax year. Now, I stress that it's the final pay period of the tax year because you may have directors that pay quarterly. Their final pay might not be in the month of March. So the reason we do this is that directors, their national insurance is based on annual thresholds. It's looked at cumulatively over a tax year, whereas only directors have that calculation method, so to speak. So the reason we swap them over is that acts as a reconciliation between what's been paid per pay period in national insurance contributions versus what they should have paid cumulatively using the annual threshold calculation. So I'm sure some software that's out there will do that reconciliation automatically. There's probably prompts and nudges in the background of the software that say, you're coming up to the final pay period. Here's a reminder. You've got this director, but they're not on an annual calculation method. Flip them over now. And that's where I think that the AI and automation can come into play. So I'm going to try and link back with every point I make as to how we can embrace automation. So the next thing, if we're thinking about tax year end and moving into a new tax year, payrolling benefits. So I won't talk about mandation right now. We can talk about that in our future segment. But if employers or bureau are thinking about wanting to payroll benefits for the 25-26 tax year, people have got to register with HMRC before the 5th of April. So everyone can take away some homework from me today. If you're looking to do it, you've got to register before the 5th of April. We still cannot payroll accommodation or loans, but everything else you can. So private medical, cars, a family holiday would be nice, wouldn't it? As a benefit in kind. But one thing the CIPP are suggesting is that you should register to payroll this year ahead of mandation in April 26. And we're almost trying to promote that as a jump before you're pushed. Have a year of practice before it's mandated for. In regards to software, once it's mandated, your software is going to be up and running and fully ready to support you in this. But that's the second kind of takeaway for the present, what I know people will be thinking about right now. So we've addressed directors NI, we've touched on payrolling benefits. For tax year end, I think it's really important to stress, and I'm sure mywage do this with your clients, that even though the software has been updated in the background for rates and thresholds and parameters, it is the payroll team's responsibility to test it. You've got to make sure that when you've got that release received, you still test it. So I always used to love doing this when I was in practice, and we wrote test scripts and we would just use the same ones year after year. So if you haven't got test scripts written for tax year end and moving into your new tax year, invest a bit of time to write them now. Then each year you just pick up your old ones, you amend your rates and your thresholds, and then you can run with them. Obviously, when there's new things implemented, so like this year, we've got statutory neonatal care leave and pay coming through. You'd have to write a new script for that because we haven't had one of those before. But again, that's where automation can come into play. You can kind of generate those scripts and you can use them every year moving forward. So now if we get down to the nitty gritty of what 25-26 is going to hold. So this is a bit of a present / future, but I'm going to go for it anyway, Ben. I hope you don't mind. So some of the biggest challenges that we're going to see are going to come into play from April, in our opinion. So we are heavily invested in national minimum wage and ensuring that employers are always compliant. So employers, whether you use an in-house payroll team or whether you use a bureau, it's an employer's responsibility to be getting national minimum wage compliance right. So this year, from the 1st of April, is one of the biggest increases to national minimum wage that we've seen. I say we, I mean the profession as a whole. It's certainly the biggest increase I've ever seen in my working career. So just to put that into numbers, because I know we all like the numbers in payroll, the rates for the youngest workers, so for your 16 and 17-year-olds, they're getting an 18% increase to national minimum wage. I don't think anyone right now in the economic climate can say they've had an 18% pay increase in the last few years. This is part of Labour's work in making work pay. They have seen national minimum wage as age discrimination. Younger workers receive a lower rate of pay. It just doesn't quite fit with the way of the world right now. So they've got to increase it, but it's a rapid increase, 18%. For 18 to 20-year-olds, they're receiving a 16.3% increase. So we're talking really big numbers here. We know it's a governed value, but that means that employers have no choice but to pay that rate to their workers. However, they have no funding in order to do so. So it's not like statutory maternity pay. You've got to pay it, but we'll give you some towards it. This is just, you're an employer and you've got to take it on the chin. You've got to pay this rate and if you don't, we'll come down on you like a ton of bricks. And rightly so, okay? They've got to pay the correct rate. Now, I can't touch on national minimum wage without talking about salary sacrifice arrangements. And we are seeing, over the last 3 years at the CIPP, more and more people who have been able to use a salary sacrifice scheme because they've been comfortably above national minimum wage. With this year's increases, it could be that now they're earning at the national minimum wage. So if you think of pension contributions for salary sacrifice, they won't be able to use a salary sacrifice mechanism, if we want to call it that, to contribute into their pension fund, which means employers now need to talk to their pension provider and make the switch from a salary sacrifice mechanism to either a relief at source or a net pay arrangement pension. And I'm sure lots of providers will be able to make that switch, but have the conversations with your pension providers before April to ensure that they can support you with your workforce needs. So we've got big increases to national minimum wage, which is on the employer's hands, right? It comes out of the employer's back pocket. Another thing coming in from April, which is more money from the employer, is national insurance. So we've got a bit of a double whammy for employers' national insurance contributions this year. So first of all, your secondary class 1 NIC. So this is the rate at which employers start to pay. That now is going to be held at 15%. So we've got an increase in the rate of national insurance that you need to pay. Secondly, the point at which you need to start paying for that. So your secondary threshold has now dropped, and it's dropped significantly. So right now, for the 24-25 tax year, the rate is £9,100. From the new tax year, it's £5,000. It's almost dropped by half. So not only are employers paying national insurance earlier, they're paying at a higher rate. So this is the double whammy that I was talking about. There is an opportunity here, and I do have to tread carefully because it's been pitched as a massive win, and it will be a massive win for smaller employers who have a smaller workforce. But there are changes to the employment allowance. So an employment allowance is almost money back from your national insurance bill. Let's call it that for non-seasoned payroll professionals. Now, it's changing and it's opening up to more employers than ever, because there used to be a cap. So if an employer had a pay bill of over £100,000, they couldn't claim the employment allowance. That cap's been lifted. So now every employer ultimately could go and claim the employment allowance, which is a good thing. But it doesn't quite outweigh the changes to employers' national insurance contributions that we've just touched upon. But we have to say that they have increased the amount employers can claim in employment allowance. So it used to be £5,000. It's now £10,500. So they've doubled it and given us a little bit extra. So we have to pose that as a positive, because we always have to end on positive. But it will be smaller employers more than larger ones that sees any benefit there. So lots going on at present, including a little bit of a sneak peek as to what's coming in the future, with lots of things to think about for 25, 26.
Very nice. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. And yes, I just want to reiterate what Mel has just put in the chat, which is we're going to touch on the future of payroll in a moment. And then afterwards, I'd love to open it up to a Q&A session. So if you have any questions for Sam or for me, please pop it in the chat now and we can kind of queue it ready for the end of the session. Cool. So lots of things happening, right? And in reality now that we're at the, halfway through Feb, not a huge amount of time for employers to get their heads around it and ensure that they're compliant. So I think number one off the back of today is definitely do your homework. Make sure that your incumbent system is compliant. You'll be delighted to know any of mywage customers listening, you're covered. But also I wanted to touch on that sort of automation piece, because automation is really prevalent now and today, and is only getting better, bigger and better every single month. And it's really interesting because most of the clients that we speak to, they have a natural hesitation, I think, around it for the exact reasons that you mentioned at the beginning. It's like, oh, I don't want to lose my job to a piece of technology. And I think at the moment, certainly, we're not seeing that at all. It's just for so many years, payroll and invoicing and everything back office really has been kind of, it's been left behind a little bit on that technology curve that we've seen. If you look at other systems that are involved in a tech stack, they seem to have jumped dramatically, especially since sort of 2018, 2019. And payroll and invoicing has been lagging behind a little bit. So now we're starting to see these changes, and naturally, people are a bit hesitant, I suppose, of it. But we're really seeing the benefits of automation. So as an example, we have a client of ours who was taking about 3 days to run payroll. Now they can do it in sub 2 hours. And that's because they can leverage automation to do, with all due respect to everyone listening, it is a very process-driven thing that you do every week, that we do every week. Payroll, you do the same things every single week. And so actually, why not get technology to do some of that heavy lifting? And it allows you, to then take on that role of being more of I'll just oversee the process and double check and sanity check before we hit go. Yeah. But also it allows you to go off and do other things within the business. You're not a slave to a spreadsheet. I mean, for us, spreadsheets are a dirty word at mywage. We are adamant to rid the world of spreadsheets from a payroll, processing point of view. And genuinely now there is a technology there to enable that. But still, every client that we speak to, still, even in, nearly halfway through 2025, they're still using spreadsheets in some way, shape or form, either from a reporting point of view or just to manage a specific piece of the puzzle that their incumbent system can't manage. And it's just like, God, come on, anyway. So yeah, we're on a mission to rid the world of spreadsheets, and client by client, we're getting there. So that's cool. Let's look ahead now. Let's look ahead to what the future could bring. And I think it would be great to get your perspective on both some of the things that we can already see coming, but also perhaps some blue sky thinking of all right, what do you and your colleagues at the CIPP sort of have up your sleeve as earmarked as things that could come our way in the coming years?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's fine. I'm really looking forward to going into that. Just wanted to touch on your slave to the spreadsheets, right? Because I absolutely love that. I do love a spreadsheet, but let's drop them with work, right? I'll use them for budgeting and holidays and all of that nice fluffy stuff that I like to do at home for family life. But absolutely drop them in the world of work. And I think, You also touched on the piece to the puzzle. Payroll professionals have such a wide remit of things they need to know about. And you could go off and be a specialist just in expenses and benefits, just statutory payments, just national minimum wage. And if automation encompassed all of the processing from a software point of view, it allows you to go and focus on that key area, so to speak. And at the CIPP, we have to listen to industry and what their needs are. And we really emphasize education and keeping payroll professionals up to speed with training, with qualifications, with resources. And we often hear from our members that the industry just want this quick hot topic. Tell me in less than an hour what I need to know about a certain thing. And that's exactly what we've done. We've listened, we've heard you, and we have launched Payroll Quick Learn, or PQL, that we're referring to it as, because we all know that payroll love an acronym. And what Payroll Quick Learn is it's a new collection of bite-sized, on-demand, short courses that will cover key payroll topics. So national minimum wage, Alabaster, global payroll. So if you've got Section 690s that you need to operate, we'll touch on all of those things. Now, they've been created with payroll professionals in mind, and it's to deliver essential payroll knowledge in under an hour, whilst offering flexible, practical learning on the go. So if your software now gives you an hour back, you can go and upskill in an area that you really want to excel in. Excel, not the spreadsheet. Excel as in go further, because it's a dirty word at mywage. Now, if we go into the future, I touched on, we've got Labour in power following the general election last year. And I'm not going to get really political, but the Labour government have pledged to make work pay. Well, the bonus for the payroll industry is we're at the heart of that, right? We are what pays workers. We are that mechanism with a heart at that pledge. So better results for workers, whether that's more money or better employment rights, can only be a good thing. You can't argue that. But a bit like national minimum wage that we've touched on before, the responsibility falls into the employer's hands to administer it, and more importantly, to fund those changes. So we know that we've got changes to statutory sick pay coming into play. Don't panic. It's not for the 25-26 tax year. Ministers, Parliament are still playing with the wording of the Employment Rights Bill, so this won't come into play until that has been passed. But the changes to SSP that we could be thinking about right now are, there will be no waiting days. And I want to give a bit of a balanced view on this. So we know that right now people can't afford to take 3 days off work. So people are coming into work when they are poorly. They're working for 3 days, and on the 4th day, they're probably thinking, I feel even worse than I did on day 1. Now I need to take a week off sick. And it takes them longer to recover because they've worked whilst they're ill. Actually, what they should have done is taken the first day off. They probably would have only been off for 3 days, and they would have been able to get back to work quicker. But people aren't doing it because they're not getting paid for that time. So the government has decided we need to change that. We need to get rid of the waiting days, which is a good thing because people will take the time off when they need it the most. The argument is, will people abuse that system? Will we see people taking off more Blue Mondays, or they just want a duvet day, so they'll ring in sick, or they'll call in sick and go off and do a Christmas shopping day at the back end of a calendar year? And you've got to have a balanced argument, but that's then down to employers to ensure they've got company policies and processes in place to ensure their workers aren't abusing the system. So that's one change. There'll be no waiting days. The other change is that SSP will now be opened up to those earning under the lower earnings limit. So right now, that's your qualifying criteria. You've got to earn at least the ALIL. So there was a call for evidence that ran late last year that the CIPP responded to. So our members helped to shape that response, and we fed back as to how we think that will work. It's going to be based on a percentage method of average weekly earnings, we expect. We did ask, can you just make it align with other statutory payments? So the same calculation that we would use for SMP, SPP, because we've already got enough on our plate, right? We don't need a new calculation to remember. Let's just align it to something else. But again, this is something that is going to be better for the workers, but it means employers will be paying more statutory sick pay in the long run, because we're now paying the first 3 days and we're paying people that we never had to pay in the past. So that's something to bear in mind as we move forward. And if I had my crystal ball that every payroll professional has on their desk, Ben, I'd have a glance into it to see when that's coming into play. It's certainly no earlier than April 26, but keep an eye on the CIPP news pages, and when we hear, we'll let you know of any progression in that area. So another thing to touch on is the mandating of payrolling of benefits. So it was announced last year that April 2026 payrolling of benefits will become mandatory. Now, HMRC have gone very quiet in this area. We haven't heard any updates. I know software developers haven't been given any spec to work towards for payrolling of benefits either. So we're still aiming for that date because we haven't heard anything else. But in the spring forecast that's being held on the 26th of March, I have a sneaking suspicion we may hear an update. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. Again, the policy team, on one of our hats we wear is our newsreader hat. Keep an eye on the news pages and we'll keep you up to date with any progression there. Now, looking ahead, every conference, every online discussion that I take part in, it's all about AI. So we've touched on the AI aspect, but we're also really looking at payroll's role in financial well-being. So financial well-being is another real buzzword in the industry at the minute. So we're already seeing trends like pay on demand or earned wage access, which ultimately gives the worker more empowerment as to how they can draw down their money. The elephant in the room is it's a marmite in the industry, and that's okay. We don't all have to like it. We don't all have to hate it either, but it's here, right? So let's just embrace it. And that's what we've done at the CIPP. We have embraced it. We know it's coming into play, and we know that workers love having this as a benefit, so to speak. So we hold the Earned Wage Access Code of Practice on our website. So if you are either a lover or a hater, if you are using earned wage access or you're looking to implement it, have a look at the Code of Practice. It was written in response to a recommendation by the Financial Conduct Authority, and it essentially sets common standards for firms providing earned wage access products to deliver good consumer outcomes. What that means is wrap it into financial education. So signpost to the Money and Pension Service, signpost to a debt solution organisation, if that's what your employees are asking for. So AI, tick, we've discussed that one. Financial well-being is another buzzword in the industry. Now, I can't talk about the future without ending on a real positive, like I said I like to do. So hours worked to be reported via RTI. Now, this has been a conversation for the last couple of years, certainly since I've worked at the CIPP, and HMRC wanted employers and bureaus to start submitting hours worked information through RTI reports. Now, the policy team have been really invested in this. I went and gave evidence in the House of Lords to the Finance Bill Subcommittee in 2023, I think now. One of the scariest moments of my life, sat in front of a room of Lords in a wood-panelled room. It's something I'll never, ever forget. But ultimately, I was asked to go and give the industry's stance on whether this should go ahead or not. And I said to them, look, you know, software will be able to keep up. Software can do anything as long as it's implemented correctly. But from a payroll professional's point of view, it's more work to do. Like, this is just piling on more admin burden. And we understand that government will presume employers, but more so bureau, will hold the number of hours that someone works a week, a month, a year. But you're wrong. They don't. In-house payroll teams are more likely to hold that data than bureaus and service providers, but we really stress that admin burden that would be piled onto the profession if they were to implement this. So we ultimately said, we don't know why you want it, and it's going to be a pain, so please don't. And they're not. We got told last month that they've U-turned their decision. Ministers have chosen to essentially scrap the collection of employee hours via RTI from April 26, which is a huge win for the industry. So that is something that we can all celebrate. We haven't got to submit hours worked to HMRC from April 26. So that's how I'm going to leave it there, Ben. I hope that's okay. If I haven't touched on anything that you wanted me to, please shout.
No, that's great. Thank you, Sam. I think we've got a couple of questions in the chat which we can get to for sure. And I think the pay on demand piece, I think you're right. It is very Marmite. So we offer that as a service, and a number of our clients have taken it up, much to the delight of the workers.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting how so many of our clients look at this and go, no, I don't care if the workers want it. I'm not doing it. But it really divides opinion. So what we've chosen to do is we've sort of intertwined our pay on demand offering with a load of educational documentation, just because we do not want to be in any way, shape or form responsible for workers kind of taking too much money and then not having enough, for the rest of the week, that month, whatever it might be. So I think it's as much an educational piece as it is a technology piece.
Yeah.
But the clients that we have that have taken it on are seeing real benefits, I suppose, from their workers in terms of worker retention as a result. And that retention rate is all important because competition is just rife at the moment, isn't it, for the best workers? But you're right, it continues to divide opinions. And on the AI piece, I think that everyone is trying to do something at the moment around automation and AI. The beauty is that our industry lends itself beautifully to it, regardless. We're kind of lucky. mywage is built on the Salesforce platform. Salesforce recently launched something called Agentforce, and we have our own version, which we've actually dubbed Maggie mywage. And this is a chatbot, effectively, that is able to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you and to work with you, not to replace you. No one's after your job. It's yours forevermore, but we just want to make your life that much more enjoyable, I suppose, whilst using mywage. And we've been really excited and enthused by the initial responses we've had from customers, certainly. So that's that was a good half hour plus on all things past, present, and future. I'd love to sort of take a few questions now from the audience. I think a few people have put some questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Anyone else that's watching, please feel free to add some comments in, and Sam and I can go through them with you.
Yeah, Jacqueline, welcome, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for your comments. She was saying mine certainly does this. I think it's when you were talking earlier on. She said, I have never had to manually adjust the director's NI at the end of the year. So
Great.
yeah, so I don't know if you want to comment on that, Ben or Sam.
No, I mean, obviously, great that yours does it. You know, that's the most important thing, I suppose.
Yeah, it gets rid of the spreadsheets, right?
Mm.
Doing this reconciliation. And I think that's the thing that I was trying to address at the start. People are scared of automation, but I bet loads of people are using it without even knowing.
Yeah.
So that is the prime example. You're not having to do that manual calc. Bonus. What can you do in that hour, for example? Think of all the value add stuff that you could just be doing to help either your own employees or your clients' employees, just to understand the tax code a bit more, to understand what national insurance is and what that is contributed towards for your future retirement. It's all those extra little bits where payroll can really come into their own.
Great. I haven't seen any other questions yet, Sam. So I think in the interest of time, given that we're nearly at time, I think it would be remiss of us not to mention that we will both be at the CIPP Payroll Live on the 5th of March. You, because you're going to be speaking there, and I would strongly encourage anyone that's going to attend your session. mywage will be exhibiting. So if you have any other questions for Sam or I or mywage or CIPP, do sort of seek us out on the 5th of March in London at the CIPP Live, and we'd be happy to have a chat. And likewise, if you've got any questions about the mywage platform and what we do and how we do it, please go to mywage.co, drop me a message on LinkedIn. You can give me a call on my number. I'll leave in the chat. And I'd love to have a chat, right? No hard sell from me, just a genuine desire to learn more about some of the ups and downs that you currently have in your business.
Yeah, fab. And likewise, like you've said, Ben, the CIPP Live is a free to attend event. You haven't got to be a member of the CIPP, just come and network with like-minded people. The legislative update that I'll be giving is all your tax rates, your statutory payments, all the things that I've just got to grips with. I'm now having to learn to be able to deliver to you moving forward. But look, it helps me remember them, right? So I'll be there. I'd love to have a chat. And again, like Ben said, add me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to support a fellow payroller.
Wonderful. Sam, thank you very much for your time today, and looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks at the CIPP Live. Really appreciate your insights. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. Thanks for having me. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.